On April 1st, 2004, the UHL, the United Hockey League, would get their newest expansion team, the Danbury Trashers. Owner and founder, Jimmy Galante, would chip in $1.5 million into fixing up the Danbury Ice Arena for his newly formed franchise. This was all made possible by Jimmy's waste management business, AWE. The team had one goal in mind: to win and to beat up anyone who tried to stop them. They called themselves the Bad Boys of Hockey, and watching their rise and fall is one of the craziest stories to be retold about a team. From a team that who looked destined to win a cup would be eventually taken down by the FBI due to connections to an organized crime family and fraud. To better understand the legacy of the Trashers, let's take it back a couple years before they were created. Jimmy's son, AJ, grew up loving watching WWE and hockey, which would eventually lead him into playing hockey at the high school level. He was a hard-hitting force on the ice who dominated his opponents thanks to his physicality and gritty play. His father never had any interest in the sport until watching AJ play his high school hockey game, and that's where they eventually would both fall in love with the sport. AJ's hockey career would come to a crashing end after being told he could never play hockey again due to a nasty collision during a game. With both AJ and Jimmy being devastated about the news, Jimmy wanted to keep his son still in the game and still invested into the game what he loves. Jimmy Galante would buy AJ a literal hockey team and named him the president and general manager of the team at only 17 years old. He would build the team by using the movie Mighty Ducks and pro wrestling as a blueprint of the Trashers. With his newfound team, he knew he had to send shockwaves through the hockey world by having his first signing be Gretzky. Yeah, the great one. Well, actually no, it's not the great one. It's his brother, Brent Gretzky. Brent would be named captain and was brought in to essentially become the face of the franchise. Gretzky wasn't the only name they brought in. They also brought in Stanley Cup winner Michael Rupp. He knew with bringing in these goal scorers, he needed to bring in some hard-hitting enforcers to protect them. He brought in the Buffalo Sabres tough guy, Roman Nyar. They also brought in Brad Wingfield, who arguably embraced what it meant to be a Trasher. He stood out more than any other of the team's players, not just because of his physicality, but also due to the fact that the dude was literally a prisoner who brought in this bad boy reputation, and for beating up 6 correctional officers. Everyone on the team stood up for each other, but especially for Wingfield, as it seemed like they all rallied around him. They especially proved this when Wingfield would suffer a leg injury thanks to Kalamazoo forward Josh Elzinga. After he withstood the injury, it turned out into an all-out brawl, which eventually led to the owner, Jimmy Galante, coming down to the ice and having a heated exchange with the referee. He would punch the referee and would eventually get charged with a misdemeanor assault. In their first ever season, the Trashers impressed by finishing second in the division with a record of 44 wins, 29 losses, and 7 shootout losses. They already had seen great success in their first ever year in the league. But one thing what stood out the most was that they broke the UHL record in penalty minutes with 2,776 penalty minutes in just one season. They were cutthroat and ruthless and set the tone nightly basis by pounding their opponents to a pulp, and their fans loved it, and they would soon embrace the team's villain-like persona, and the team would be known as the Bad Boys of Hockey. With them winning games and just how competitive the hockey was, this drew fans into the building, breaking league-wide attendance records almost on a daily basis, even when Wingfield and Endor got suspended. Fans still kept on coming and eventually would become more involved, giving a whole new meaning to home ice advantage. They would eventually go on to the league final, but would lose. It was clear for what the goal was for their second season. It was to win the Colonial Cup, and the Danbury Trashers did just that by by making Brad Winfield made his return, causing one of the most brutal rematches in the UHL history. The Thrashers would, however, lose the series 4-1, ending their run empty-handed, but the future seemed bright as AJ was developing himself as a skillfully minded general manager, and the team had the whole community driving to the games and passionate for the new team. But in the off season, it would all come crashing down. You remember Jimmy's trash company, AWE? Well, turns out it was being ran through the mob. He would run his garbage business using mob-like tactics to strong-arm competitors trying to get in his way, and he would eventually be charged with racketeering and racketeering conspiracy, as well as a tax fraud eventually getting exposed as being linked to the infamous Javanese crime family in New York. Galante would sort of use the same tactics with the Trashers, with paying numerous players under the table and what was almost double the league cap. Jimmy would also send several checks to several of the spouses of the Trashers players from different trash companies for no-show jobs. It was also found later on in the investigation that Jimmy had a plan to defund the UHL. Jimmy was looking to be facing over 100 years in prison, but Galante would plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to violate the RICO Act, one count of conspiracy to defraud the International Revenue Service, and one count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Eventually, 100 years became just 87 months, and Galante would be forced to forfeit his ownership interest in over 25 trash companies because of this. And because of this, the Trashers would begin to experience financial troubles, which eventually led to the collapse of the franchise. Aside from the craziness and madness, what happened over the 2 years the team was there for, it all comes down to it, just a story between a father and son who connected over the game of hockey and helped many others connect with each other. Now that we have an understanding of what happened in the untold documentary, Crimes and Penalties by Netflix, we can now understand some more of the lenses. We will start out with the reader response lens. Have you ever received a gift? Well, I know I have, but I don't think I've never received a gift like becoming the president and general manager of a hockey team. For the historical and biographical lens, we could ask of what was really happening politically during this whole time. Well, we could think back to Jimmy's court case and how he was a part of an organized crime family. Many also speculate that the TV show, The Sopranos, was based off of Jimmy Galante and his family. For the psychological lens, we could think of how Jimmy and AJ rallied their whole community together to get behind of this hockey club and create lasting memories, what are still talked about today. You can also look at it as a father just trying to bond with his son over a game what he loves, what he can no longer play. Next, we can look at the gender lens. With hockey being a mainly male-dominant sport, there are not too much women who are in the management business, but now there are starting to become more and more, as well as the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League, starting up 2 years ago, is a great push for women in the sport. This will conclude my ISU presentation. Thank you for watching and listening.